So I don't think that such a country should be deciding the fate of the other nations if it supports the terrorist international, Syria, Iran, Northern Korea, and trying to undermine the rest of the international community.
Russia says that 3 people have been killed during a Ukrainian drone attack on a major airbase inside Russian territory. It comes as Ukraine has called for Russia's removal from the United Nations Security Council. The foreign minister is proposing a peace summit by the end of February. Alexander Khara is a former advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Defence and fellow of the Centre of Defence Strategies. He's in Kyiv and with us this morning. Good morning to you, Alexander.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Tell me about the stage in the war that we're at, as is signified or signalled by the fact that Russian people have been killed inside Russian territory after a drone attack by Ukraine. They haven't actually formally admitted responsibility, but that is certainly what the reports are coming back with.
Well, we were in war with Russia since 2014, and certainly all Russian military facilities on the Russian mainland are legitimate targets for Ukrainian armed forces. And if we are talking about particularly this one, this Engels Air Base, where the strategic bombers of the Russian Federation are based, and they are used to shell Ukrainian cities by rockets, by rockets barrages. So that's why what happened is just a sign that it's better for the Russians to stop killing Ukrainian citizens, civilians, destroying Ukrainian critical infrastructure. So I believe that there is nothing wrong from Ukrainian side to target military objects on the Russian territory. But I haven't seen actually Ukrainian armed forces claiming this attack. We are just I believe the most important thing to disable Russian ability to target Ukrainian cities rather than to celebrate a victory if we take off some of the strategic bombers that they have. And actually, it's by the way, the Ukrainian let's say investment in the whole European security, because all those bombers and rockets were aimed at the Europeans first and foremost, not to Ukrainians. It just happens that Putin decided to start this useless for Russians war.
Talking of other European nations, the foreign minister, Dmitry Kuleba, has said that they want to call for Russia to be stripped of its permanent membership of the UN Security Council. Tell us about the significance of that.
Well, Russia is proud to be the permanent member of the UN Security Council, which means it holds veto power and can veto everything. And we've seen on many occasions, not just because of Ukraine, but before, that Russia misused this veto power. And according to Ukrainian side, and actually, if you have a look at the UN Charter and how Russian Federation inherited this seat, so it was in violation of the UN Charter, because when the UN was, let's say, organized, there was a Soviet Union, and none of the countries of the United Nations voted for Russia. So that's why we're trying to, let's say, show that it's not a place for Russia that is violating norms and principles of international law, beginning from the UN Charter. Then we see final act that are talking about non-violent resolution of conflict or non-violent change of borders. So Russia should be expelled from the UN, like it was with the Soviet Union after the aggression against Finland. She was expelled. I mean, the Soviet Union was expelled from the League of Nations. So I don't think that such a country should be deciding the fate of the other nations if it supports the terrorist international, Syria, Iran, Northern Korea, and trying to undermine the rest of the international community, and it wages the genocidal war against Ukraine. So it's not the place for Russia to be at this table.
Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Kuleba's said that Ukraine's aiming to hold a peace summit by the end of February, but he has put a caveat in there. He said that Moscow needs to face prosecution for war crimes at an international court before Russia are invited to that peace summit. I mean, how realistic is that? Surely that is going to be an incredibly rare situation to get Russia in front of a war crimes court, and use that precedent in order to get them in front of you for a peace summit? I mean, it sort of appears to me to be a request that is never going to be met.
Well, the Nazis in Germany were thinking the same way because they started a war in Poland in 1939, and then they conquered half of Europe. So certainly they didn't think about facing the justice in Nuremberg. So that's why it's important for not just for Ukraine, because from our point of view, impunity for the Soviet crimes and the Russian crimes per se. It's something that is driven, it's their foreign policy, because they've been killing Ukrainians in millions during the Holodomor in 1932-33, and they've been killing Chechens and Georgians this century. So that's why we need to make them face the justice. And certainly with this regime, it's impossible. But if there is a regime change in Russia, and there are some liberals, Democrats, or whatever, even though I'm a bit skeptical about this part, they will need to get back to from the call to the international community. And that's why they will be in a position to prosecute war crimes, the
But
most
then,
terrible crimes committed by the Russian authorities, and not just soldiers, but those
yeah.
who designed this war of aggression.
Why would Russia show up, though? Why would Russia show up to that war crimes court? Why would Russia show up to a peace summit at the end of February?
Well, so they have no intention. They have an intention to subjugate Ukraine and to start new conflicts. Like now we see the tensions in Kosovo, and there is a Russian part in that, including the mercenaries Wagner, who established the office in Belgrade. Well, yes, but from the other hand, and actually Russians are not part of the Rome Statute, they are not part of the International Criminal Court, so there is no legal possibility to bring them to this court and to judge. But the European powers and the Group of Seven decided to extend the judicial the spheres of their countries on Russia and the crimes committed extraterritorially. And it's mean that there is a possibility to trial Russia criminals in absentia. So it's really important to show that none of the nations on this world, even though those who possess nuclear arms, are immune from prosecution if they are committing the most horrible crimes of our age. So that's why I don't expect Russians to take part in that, and they already said that. But from the other hand, we cannot ignore all those crimes. And if you're talking about peace formula, the peace formula of President Zelensky, supported by all Ukrainians, is based on UN Charter. It means that Ukrainian territorial integrity should be restored, including Crimea. And then justice, that all those who planned and carried out this aggressive war should be punished. And third, it's actually the retribution, the Russian money, and especially those assets freezed across the world,
Understood.
should be used for Ukraine. And certainly security guarantees for Ukraine, not for Russia is it demanded, but for Ukraine that is suffering Russian aggression.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Alexander Khara, former advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Defence and fellow of the Centre of Defence Strategies.